All right, so now let's do some problems that are just a little bit more involved. And so we have 3 minus 4i times 2 plus 2i. And when you see something like this, you immediately think to yourself, the FOIL method. So we look and we say, okay, we have 3 times 2, which equals 6, plus 3 times 2i, which equals 6i. And then we have minus 4i times 2, which is minus 8i. And then we have minus 4i times 2i, which is minus 8i squared. And so this could be simplified to 6 plus, well then 6i minus 8i is negative 2i. And then we're left with minus 8i squared. Now when we see that I squared, we should think to ourselves, well, I squared is the same thing as saying square root of negative 1 times square root of negative 1. And we know that that equals negative 1. So I squared equals negative 1. So whenever we see an I squared here, we know we could replace it with a negative 1. So let's try to do that. So we say equals 6 plus negative 2i minus 8 times negative 1. And if we have negative 8 times negative 1, we could get 6 minus 2i, and this is just plus 8. So plus 8. And then we could say, well, we could add 6 plus 8, and we get 14 minus 2i. But the thing is that this is in the form of a plus bi, which is the expression that we want to get. Because 14 equals a, and negative 2 equals b, and so 14 minus 2i is in the expression that we want it to be in. So how about this one? We have 6 plus I divided by 6 minus I, and we need to simplify this. And we need to somehow get it into the form of a plus bi. And right now, that is definitely not in the form of a plus bi. So what do? We have to multiply the numerator and denominator by some number where it somehow comes out to the expression of a plus bi. So the thing we need to do is get rid of this I in the denominator. And the way to do that is you have to multiply it by its conjugate. So if this is the expression we want to get rid of, then we need to multiply the numerator and denominator by its conjugate. And what do I mean by that? So a conjugate is just, let's say I have a plus bi. Its conjugate is just a minus bi. All you got to do is just change that sign. So if I had 3 plus 2i, its conjugate is 3 minus 2i. If I had 7 plus 5i, its conjugate is 7 minus 5i. If I had 2 minus 3i, its conjugate is 2 plus 3i. All right, so just keep flipping that sign, and that's how you get the conjugate. So in the case of 6 minus I, since we want to get rid of that I expression in the denominator, we have to multiply the numerator and denominator by this conjugate, which is 6 plus I. It's just a coincidence that its conjugate is the same as the numerator, but we want to multiply it by 6 plus I, the numerator and denominator. And why is it that we could do this without changing the value of the answer, right? Without changing the value of this fraction? It's because when you multiply anything by, it's because 6 plus I divided by 6 plus I is the same thing as 1. So we're multiplying 6 plus I divided by 6 minus I times, and this is essentially equal to 1. Because if you take anything and you have the exact same thing in numerator and denominator and you divide it, you're going to get 1. If you have 3 plus 2x divided by 3 plus 2x, this is going to equal 1. Because the numerator equals the denominator, and when you divided the two, you get 1. So we know that we're not changing anything inherent in this value, by multiplying the numerator and denominator by the exact same number. So now, let's see what this comes out to. So we'll do the FOIL method again. So 6 times 6 is 36. 6 times I is plus 6i. And then I times 6 is 6i. And then I times I is I squared. Now we do the same thing. 6 times 6 is 36. Plus 6 times I is 6i. And negative I times 6 is negative 6i. And this is the thing that we're looking for. This is why we multiply by its conjugate. This is the sweetness right here, because that is going to equal 0. And then we get rid of the i's. And then negative I, the last one is negative I times I equals negative I squared. And now let's see what happens when we simplify this. So we have 36 in the numerator plus 6i plus 6i, which equals 12i, plus I squared. And remember we said the I squared equals negative 1. So that's the same thing as negative 1. Then we go to the denominator. 36 plus 6i minus 6i, which equals 0, minus I squared. And we know that I squared equals negative 1. So don't forget that sign is outside of the I squared. So we keep that the same. And we just change the I squared to negative 1. So let's keep simplifying. So 36 minus 1 is 35 plus 12i divided by 36. Now minus I is the same thing as saying this is the same thing as plus 1. So it's pretty much just 36 plus 1, which is 37. And now to get into the expression of a plus bi, we divide both these parts by 37. So we have 35 divided by 37 plus 12 over 37i. So A is 35 over 37 and B is 12 over 37. All right, so that's the answer.